My name is Camille Burnett, and I've always been the quiet one in my family. I grew up in the shadow of my father, a self-made man who built Bennett and Company, a construction company, from the ground up. He was a towering figure, not just in stature, but in presence. When my mother passed away when I was 12, it was just the two of us. We weren't overly affectionate, but we shared a bond built on trust, not words. He trusted me to understand his world, and I trusted him to guide me through it. When I was 17, my father married Diane, a polished woman a decade younger than him. She had a way of lighting up a room, and for the first time in years, I saw my father smile with genuine joy. I wanted to support him, so I welcomed her, unaware she would become my greatest challenge. Diane never spoke harshly to me, but her gaze was calculating, as if I were an obstacle to the life she envisioned, a life of wealth, control, and attention. Over time, Diane began reshaping our world. She convinced my father to add her name to small assets, then redecorated the house, erasing traces of my mother's presence. The wallpaper my mother chose, the curtains she hung, gone. By the time I was 25, my father's health was declining, and Diane took over his schedule, medications, and even business meetings. I stayed silent, not wanting to seem petty or paranoid. That was my mistake. When my father suffered a sudden stroke and passed away, I was shattered. Diane, however, moved quickly, orchestrating the funeral with precision, as if it were a performance. I felt like a stranger at my own father's farewell. At a family meeting she called afterward, I expected to discuss the will. Instead, Diane sat at the head of the table, a single document before her. "Your father left everything to me," she said, her smile cold. "The house, the company, the cars, everything. You're welcome to stay for a while, but legally, I'm in charge now." The room fell silent. My heart pounded, but I didn't cry or argue. I nodded, because Diane didn't know the truth. Months before his death, my father and I had a quiet conversation in his study. Diane was out, and he poured us tea, his hand steady but his voice heavy. "Camille," he said, "there are things you need to know if anything happens to me." He had noticed Diane's subtle maneuvers, her push of control, her hunger for his legacy. He wasn't blind, just tired. So, without her knowledge, he updated his estate plans, creating a private trust with me as the sole beneficiary. Diane would receive a modest stipend, nothing more. "I don't want to fight," he said, "but if it comes to it, you'll have the truth." I was stunned not because of the money, but because he saw me, really saw me. He trusted me to carry his values forward. After his death, I kept quiet, letting Diane believe she had won. I had copies of the trust documents and the contact of Mark Ellison, my father's lawyer and best friend. When I called Mark after Diane's announcement, he was calm. "Your father expected this," he said. "We're ready." We waited, documenting Diane's every move. She reveled in her newfound power, sitting at my father's desk, calling herself CO, and firing loyal staff like Miss Keller, his longtime secretary. She redecorated his study into a personal spa, moved company funds to her personal account, and even tried to sell a Vermont rental property under the trust. Every step was a misstep, and we recorded it all: emails, transactions, signatures. One day, Diane saw me at the office, dropping off my father's books. "You should move on, Camille," she said, twirling her pen. "This isn't your world anymore." I smiled and nodded. "You're right." But I wasn't defeated. I was prepared. The turning point came when Diane listed the Vermont property for sale. Mark filed an injunction, and her lawyer, clearly outmatched, panicked. The trust documents, notarized and sealed, were revealed. Diane's fantasy unraveled. In court, Mark presented a meticulous case: bank statements, recordings, emails, and the property sale attempt. Diane's lawyer stammered. She had no defense. The judge, unimpressed by her theatrics, ruled swiftly. The trust stood. Diane had no claim beyond her stipend. She was ordered to return misappropriated funds and resign from all company roles. With one gavel strike, her empire collapsed. The house was mine again, not just legally but emotionally. I restored my father's study, bringing back his leather chair and books, placing his old cufflinks in a glass box on the desk. But the real work was at Bennett and Company. Diane's brief reign had left the company adrift. Staff were demoralized, client uncertain. I didn't walk in with grand speeches. I listened, rehired unfairly dismissed employees, and met with department heads. Slowly, confidence returned. Clients stayed. One day, Mr. Langford, a longtime employee, said, "You're your father's daughter." He'd be proud. I nodded, fighting tears, because that was all I wanted, to honor him. Diane moved to Florida, spinning tales of betrayal. I didn't care. I had peace, something she'd never understand. She lost the house, the money, the title. But more importantly, she lost the illusion she could steal a legacy. I didn't need to gloat or post online. My victory was in the quiet restoration of my father's world. This journey wasn't just about reclaiming what was mine. It was about stepping out of the shadows. I've been underestimated my whole life. By Diane, by others who thought I was too soft, too quiet. But I learned you don't need to be loud to be strong. You don't need to scream to be heard. Sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one shaping the outcome. To anyone feeling overlooked or pushed aside, your power lies in knowing who you are. Patience, preparation, and purpose are your weapons. Let others think you're weak, then stand up and speak once. The room will change. My father didn't just protect me with documents. He empowered me with trust. And if he's watching, I hope he's smiling. Not because I defeated Diane, but because I carry his legacy with the strength he always saw in me.